Hi, and welcome to the Connection Over Perfection podcast. I am Amber McCrae, your therapeutic nutritionist and host. Join me on a holistic healing journey where we explore the power of nutrition and connection for your overall well being, where we embrace connection over perfection. Okay, amazing souls, welcome back to Connection Over Perfection. And today I would like you to meet Patricia Bradley, a remarkable woman on a journey dedicated to her family, health, and purpose. Patricia is not just a client, but a lifelong beastie who embodies unwavering commitment to her family and their well-being. As a loving mother of three, Patricia's world revolves around her children, and her deep Christian faith provides a guiding light. While she manages a team in her full-time job, Patricia's true passion lies in her family's health, with a special focus on her son's well-being. Their collective energy has been marked by determination and resilience, and Patricia understands the profound importance of health for her amazing children. She's achieved impressive fitness goals like running 500 miles in 2022 and now embraces strength training and endurance. What sets Patricia apart is her dedication to personal growth, whether it's parenting, nurturing connections, or discovering purpose. She continuously evolves. Patricia's story is a testament to the transformative power of unwavering love and commitment, not just for herself, but her family, especially her son, whose health experience forms the heart of this episode. It's a reminder that such dedication can inspire others and create lasting change. Patricia, thank you so much for being here, and I love you.
I love you, Amber. Will you marry me?
Yes, I will. I've been waiting years for you to ask me that. Okay, done. We're done. No.
Yeah, I know, right? Thank you for that. Those wonderful words. That was nice to hear. Thank you so much.
Yes, that's one of my favorite parts actually about doing the podcast and having guests on, is being able to just shine some light on the beautiful people that come here and just remind them how fucking amazing they are.
Yeah, you're good at that.
So I call you P.
Mhm.
The world calls you Patricia. What would you like to be called today?
P is good. That's what I'm used to hearing from you. Yeah.
Okay. It's easier for me. I think it might be really I had to concentrate on calling you Patricia. It felt very weird.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right.
Okay. So Pete, what circumstances led you to consider taking the delayed food allergy test for your son? And could you describe his health condition prior to the test and, the challenges that you were really facing?
For sure, yeah. So I'll start at the beginning. He's my third kid, and I had raised two kids. They seem to be having very, I would call it, normal experience with food and their intake of their meals. Everything seemed, hunky dory. And then I have my third kid, and same process. I nursed him for the first probably year of his life, and everything was good at the beginning. But further into his toddlerhood, we would notice strange behavior. He started hoarding kind of his food in his cheeks, which was very confusing for us. So we would figure out, like, oh, your full meals in your cheeks, like swallow it, and it was confusing. But of course, by the time he would try to swallow, there'd be gagging involved because the texture, it was not pretty. So we thought that was odd, but continued on, sort of made accommodations. We would always have kind of crackers on the side, or in the long run, I think I ended up just wrapping all of his meals in a tortilla just to sort of ease the process of him, getting that food down. It's so funny, the idea that we just kept kind of accommodating. We never stopped to question, like, why is this happening? Although those thoughts ran through my head continuously, it was never like oh, let's stop here and examine this. We just kept accommodating, really. So it even got to the point where just the smell of certain foods, as he got older, um, he would just gag out of the smell of foods. And then when he started school, we would make him his breakfast. And when he woke up in the morning, it got to the point where just a drink of water filled him up. He's like, I'm so full, I can't eat breakfast. And so we would send him off with his breakfast to have as a snack when he got hungry, which, it didn't feel good. It was not fun to send your child off to school without food, first thing in the morning. So, but again, just kept on with accommodations. But, again, as the older he got, I would notice he was very thin, but he would always have like this protruding belly, like this kind of pretty bloated tummy. And as he got older, it was more clear that he was very thin. His body, grew, but he didn't put on weight. He wasn't gaining weight except for his protruding little tummy would stick out. And so I started noticing, just the pale skin, really thin. And then he started complaining headaches, nausea, a lot of just those sort of symptoms that are weird for so young, somebody in kindergarten or even preschool. Every day I have a headache, I have a stomach ache, things like that. And so it really started to, make me nervous. And it was odd too, because I felt like I was the only one that saw it. I would see these things in him and say something to other people, and they're like, oh, he's fine. Even his pediatrician was like, when I would talk about his weight, when I would take him to his checkups, she's like, listen, most kids are just overweight. He's fine. And I'm thinking, I can see his skeleton. Like, he's not fine. And so it really was that journey, I think, of recognizing things, but then questioning yourself because you can't really find that support. And so his condition before the test, I would say, was pretty miserable. He had, again, regular of those symptoms. He had trouble focusing once he was in school, every day, headache, nausea, same sort of thing. And we went on to try different things. I know that my sister has celiac, and so it did cross my mind that maybe he could have a gluten allergy. So we would try our efforts in certain things. Tried to exclude gluten. We went like lactose free milk instead of dairy free. We tried a whole bunch of stuff. And even though we saw slight little, maybe small increases, we never really saw full recovery or anything like that. I would say that emotionally, he was very anxious because the nausea would make him nervous that he was going to throw up, and that would sort of feed into his anxious, setting, and then the anxiety would further induce the symptoms. It was this pretty vicious cycle. And so at a certain point, I really got dedicated to making notes and recording like different things, because I'm like, okay, I tried this on my own. My efforts to cut out food dairy free and gluten free weren't really doing the trick. So I'm like, I'm going to take him back to the doctor. I'm going to show her these notes, and I'm going to, like put my foot down, like something's going to happen.
Right.
So I went, I took him to the doctor. I think he was about 6 years old. And we tried that route, but same thing, just reassured me that he's fine. She wanted to put him on antacids, was her solution, and that didn't sit right with me. So I didn't take the prescription for the antacids, left the office, thanked her for her time, and I really think I had put so much hope into that it took me a while to recover from the idea that I felt like I was on my own. I wasn't getting any support. I mean, in the meantime, the whole time I'm telling you, Amber, about this process, and you totally understood because you went through the same thing. You're like, listen, this is exactly very, very similar with your son.
Right. Yeah. That's huge. I just want to like kind of go back really fast. First, I just want to say thank you so much for being so vulnerable. I can
Mhm.
still see and hear how raw this is for you and how emotional it is going through this and experiencing this with your baby. So, first, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and his story with us. And you said something that was really huge that I kind of just want to go back and touch on a little bit is you were talking about a lot of his physical ailments, but then you also touched a little bit on his emotional and you being really in tune with that. This isn't something we talked about, but when you were talking about it, it really sparked. And I think it played such a huge role as well in being really in tune with your son is his emotional before school. And so not only did you make the shift medically with what you did, but also you saw that there was something else going on. Can you talk a little bit about his schooling and how you guys changed that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Once he was full blown in school, it did become very clear that he was struggling to focus. And we actually got to the point where the school was sending home notices that he was going to get held back. And that was fearful as a parent. I mean, I had two other kids in the same school. My mind, just goes wild like, oh no, he's going to get kicked out. I'm going to have to deal with two different schools. And, so again, that put pressure on me to put pressure on him. It was bad. I mean, it's at that point, I do feel that there was a lot of emotion, that fear and anxiety, the what ifs. But for sure, I did try and really be available for him, emotionally as well, in order to sort of help him through these episodes, because he would get so anxious. I would just sort of get his attention, hold his little cheeks in my hands, and make eye contact, look at me, and he would look at me, and I'd make silly faces, and then he'd smile, so it was like a matter of helping him redirect his energy. We would breathe together because his anxiety just went through the roof, worrying that he was going to throw up. So yeah, and school, school exasperated it. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, and how did all of this have an effect on your family as a whole?
So with his lack of ability to focus in school, we had to do a lot of work outside of school. He would get sent home blank papers that he hadn't finished, and with the teacher reminding me daily with these little bright neon colored notes that he was going to get held back and have to repeat kindergarten, and so we would be at the table for hours in kindergarten doing this work. And I mean, I was so focused in on this, and he would just lose focus and be staring at the sky. And I'm like, you have to look at the paper. Like, I'd be begging him, like, we can't do this work, you can't read unless you're looking at the paper. And it was just this whole event. My other two kids are probably hiding or just bouncing off the walls because the energy in the house was so high as far as tension, with this. So yeah, for sure, it's so interesting that this could lead to that, but it definitely did. I mean, we were moving along pretty fast, when I think back. I mean, we handled day to day to day, but the chaos and the tension in the household was definitely up there.
Yeah, thank you again for being so vulnerable. So I think I hear you saying that not only was what your son was going through highly affecting him, it was definitely affecting you and the rest of your family and played a huge impact on, like you said, the energy and the fear and the anxiety and the pressure that everything kind of just came crashing. And so you were talking about the point where everything shifted for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what you did?
For sure, yeah. So I had been reaching out to you, Amber, and you had told me about this test and really recommended it, but I just had to do it my way first. I guess I had to get this out of my system. I'm like, no, no, I got this. I can do it. I can take care of my son. And then I'm like, okay, all right, maybe, maybe I need some help. I'll go to the doctor. And I tried that route. And I think ultimately, when those two just brought no solution, I was like, okay, I think we're here. I said, Amber, I'm ready. We're going to do this. And that's really what brought me to that point of deciding. I think I just had exhausted all of my efforts, and I was so afraid, not only from the school, that whole experience, but I just couldn't take it anymore, thinking that everything I was feeding him was literally poisoning his body. That's really where I got to that point. I'm like, I don't know what to feed him, that I feel like everything I do is just making it worse. And so I'm like, okay, that's it. We're doing this test.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just this shifting in everything. I mean, we've been talking about so much about emotions and connection. And in this process, you guys were also shifting to homeschool as well. So there was a lot of changes and thinking differently, the programmings, and like you were saying, just always been able to trust your doctor that they are going to help, that they had the answers. And so being very scared and unsure of why now, why is this happening now, and like almost grieving in the midst of this loss of a safe place. Is that close?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I thought for sure that that would be my saving grace. It's like, okay, I'll do this myself before I even go to the doctor. It's like, okay, all else has failed. I'm going to go to the doctor. But yeah, when I heard those words, absolutely, it took me a couple weeks to snap back and get out of that sort of, like you said, grieving process where it's like, oh, I mean, I asked for blood tests. I asked for more, and it was like, no, we're just gonna put him on antacids, and check back in 6 months. And I was just like, he's 6 years old. Like this, I don't know. I was blown away. So absolutely, yeah, that's on
Right.
point, 100%.
And two, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you are a person who loves researching. You research and you dive in before you do something. And so it was really important to you, and you have done a lot on your own and gotten
Mhm.
far with being able to research and provide for your family and find the answers. And in this, it just maybe felt like there was a tool
Exactly.
missing. And so that frustration of why can't I do
Hmm.
this when you've been so successful? And I just want to point that out because this journey isn't just for people who just rely on everybody else to get the answers, is that the frustration and that there are people such as yourself who really dive in and research and do the legwork and do all of this stuff and still sometimes come up short, which is for a very strong pursuer
Hmm.
and somebody who is able to achieve. I can only imagine how frustrating that is because I don't relate whatsoever from that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Amber, it's amazing how spot on you are, because that's exactly what I did, and where it had, that research and that confidence, and like I got this, but my research led me down to like give him milk first thing in the morning. That will help with his early fullness because of the acid in his stomach overnight. And so I was giving him milk, which we found out later he's intolerant to dairy, all of dairy across the board, so. And then again, the focus issues. My research was like led me to believe he struggles with dyslexia. So that was where I was going with that. A lot of the signs fit in, and I was telling his teachers, no, you don't understand. He's dyslexic. It's like, but then again, you label your kid with that too. I mean, and that's a whole other path and a whole other road that you're going down. It's insane. It really feels insane. So yeah.
Yeah, and just knowing what to trust. And it's so much information, and really having to figure out what felt right and resonate for you and your family. And you had to try these things to figure out, what do I trust in? What road am I going to go on? Which it makes so much sense. And I think just shows how dedicated you are to really investing in your family and yourself, which is very commendable. And I just love you, but I might be a little bit biased over here. And so, in talking about all of this, we're talking about the delayed food allergy test. And what that is an IgG antibody test. This test in specific that we're talking about tests for 184 foods and herbs against your immune system on a scale, how your body reacts to those foods. And so, like Patricia was saying, I've experienced that the doctors won't give this test, which is mind blowing and extremely frustrating.
It is 100%.
But this basically tells you what foods are good for your body. And we're so individualized that when we try to do a one size fits all, this is kind of where we come out, is that in some cases, overall, some people might be fine. Other cases, people are not fine. And we hear more about like the anaphylactic, which is like the IgE testing that we do where, your throat swells up or you need Benadryl, you get stung by a bee and it goes away within like
Mhm.
24 hours or so. But the delayed food allergy stays in your system, the half life up to 28 days. So most people don't even know that they're having an allergic reaction because some of the symptoms are, bloating, eczema, psoriasis, headaches, stomach aches, nausea, dark circles under your eyes, all of these things. And when we talk about these things, people don't associate these with an allergy. They're like, oh, well, that's just common. And in my line of work, I'm like, it may be common, but it's not natural. It's we are a society so used to being sick. And
Right.
so you got this test for your son. Tell us, how did things shift?
Well, I just gotta say, he is a trooper. I mean, he's a kid. He was maybe, what, 7 or 8. And when he was so funny because I had told him that we're going to get the test. And he's like, oh, please let me be allergic to broccoli because he does not, not like broccoli. But he's not. He's not allergic to broccoli. Anyway, so I had given him a full heads up that he would have to get the blood draw and go through the whole process. So we did, and he was very open to getting the results. And then it was just a matter of kind of like what you said, how it's a delay, right? And so even once we found out that he had these, intolerances, it was tough, not only him to kind of grasp it, but also the adults in our life, where it's like, oh, here, have some ice cream. Oh, look, you don't have a stomach ache. Great. That's so wonderful. You didn't get a stomach ache. And then, a day and a half later, he's keeled over. He can't sleep. He's got these extreme pains, and I'm like, oh, it's very frustrating. But I get it because people, like, just like you said, people expect to see that immediate response to a food allergy because they're thinking peanuts or, shellfish, things like that are just these immediate responses. But this is tricky because it's so different ish. I mean, it's like you said, it's everywhere and it's way more common than I think we realize. But we're just not used to that quite yet, I think, as a society. So he embraced, cutting things out, and we had him on a probiotic and vitamins and things like that. And it was just incredible watching him being able to eat and be excited about the food that he was eating and feel good. I was like over the moon. Just, it felt like I had relaxed for the first time in, years. It was pretty elating. And we just were, both of us, he and I were both on it. Like, we're like, okay, this is working. This is great, But then you hit that spot where it's like McDonald's French fries. He's got his highest one is peanuts. His highest number was peanuts, one of them. And French fries in most locations are fried in peanut oil. And so you think, oh, French fries should be fine, right? As long as there's a dedicated air fryer or something like that. But sure enough, he'd eat some French fries and then have the stomach ache. And so we would have the setbacks and things like that. That would, he would then go through the whole process of having those terrible symptoms again. But it's been a couple years now, and he really, I think, is getting to the point. Absolutely, I would say that he's feeling a lot more empowered. There was a time when I'm like telling him yes or no, you can't have this, you can have this, no, you can't. But then I felt I needed to give him the tools to make his own choices. And then I had to just zip my mouth and sit back and let him experience the benefits or consequences of his choices, and so he started to really feel empowered. Even this last month was my older son's birthday, and I came to him and I'm like, listen, we're going to have the regular Caesar salad. There's going to be cupcakes with regular flour and a whole ton of dairy. Like, and I was going to say, like, keep in mind, it's up to you. You can make that choice. But immediately he was like, okay, that's okay, Mom. I'll ask Grandma to make me the lava cake that I love. And we could do the salad with the dressing that I love, and things like that. So I was just like speechless. I was so proud of him because I know that's so tough, especially as a kid, not being able to eat like everyone else, especially at birthday parties. That's probably the hardest one. But at this point, if he wants ice cream, we've done homemade ice cream, and we've done homemade chocolate chip cookies. He has this microwave recipe. He'll do it. It's like a minute and a half once you get all the ingredients together. And he found that recipe, and we make it all the time. And so I'm super proud, of course, but just relieved, really, and watching him embrace this and take the lead on it is huge, as a parent, and then just as anybody who saw someone in so much pain, to see them not only not in pain but excited that there's a whole world opening up of things that he can eat that won't make him feel like garbage. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I just absolutely love this story because it's beautiful to watch as we are a close family, and so our sons are very similar, and being able to see the shift in him as well, and just your experience of watching, like you said, your very sick small child
Mhm.
just in pain.
Baby.
Yeah, your baby to this thriving, energetic, healthy boy, and so that's beautiful. And I love, like you were saying, this experience of finding things that he can eat. When my mom made that cheesecake that completely he could have, and he was like, this is the best thing I've had since this test. And just finding those things. But I think that you said something so big, so powerful about this is empowerment.
Mm,
And the process of where he didn't want to not feel good either. And he was like, okay, if you have a test, I'll do whatever I need to do so that I can function, so that I can play, I can do these things. Because, like you were saying, it was keeping him from being able to enjoy school and play with his friends. And so
mhm.
he's like, sure, I'll do these things. And then he felt that. And I think that that's
Yeah.
so huge because, so, like you were saying, society doesn't talk about this because we're overall, in my opinion, a very sick society. We don't know what it feels like to feel good.
Mhm.
And then once he felt what it feels like to feel good,
Exactly.
he then was like, hey, I don't want to feel like crap anymore. And then also that, like you said, that empowerment of being able to make those decisions on his own, because I don't know if you experienced this, but in this whole journey, I was also fearful that I was going to go on the flip side and have food be this huge issue for him because he couldn't have these things. And so I didn't want it to like backfire my fear of him
Yes.
being sick and, hurting his body essentially with this, because what it does is your body is attacking these foods that you bring in because it sees it as a pathogen. So your immune system is over here fighting, say, broccoli, um, if he was allergic to broccoli or intolerant to broccoli,
Right.
and your body is fighting all of these things. It doesn't have enough energy to fight off all these other things. And so giving him that power to make those decisions, because the main focus was healing his gut back up, right? So when we are consuming those foods, it causes a lot of inflammation and leaky gut. And that is directly connected to every part of us, especially emotions and things like that. So removing those items from his diet, we couple the delayed food allergy with an elimination diet to, knock out any false positives and just allow his body to restore again,
Mhm.
feel what it feels like to feel good. And then we bring those things back in to see how his body feels. And so giving him that power to make those decisions for himself. And like you said, being able to then find things, and this is not just about him now as a child, but wanting to give him that empowerment and that knowledge for when he's an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And all of this is tied into, of course, connection and emotions, and how being able to allow him to connect with his body
Mm-hmm.
and feel what his body feels like. And in this whole process, you were also connecting with him on a different level and being able to really be emotionally there for him. And with the school, they played a role together while you were also doing the delayed food allergy test and removing that, allowing his gut to heal. You also chose to homeschool, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So that also would remove some of the stress,
Yes.
because that stressor, your body doesn't know the difference between stress in school or your body consuming a food intolerance and it's stressing your body.
Yeah.
And so you actually met your son on both sides of that and removed that stressor. And can you talk to us a little bit about the whole experience now with school and his gut and his emotions and kind of where you guys are now?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because I remembered I wanted to talk more on that. It's like you read my mind. So he was in kindergarten, and about halfway through was when COVID hit. And so I feel like I was super fortunate. I was able to work from home. And then, of course, the kids were schooling from home. But with him being the youngest, I set him up right next to me. You know, he's still in kindergarten. I had my laptop, he had his laptop. We were doing our thing right next to each other. And so that alone alleviated a ton of stress. And again, with our system sort of that we had established when he did have an attack, I was able to be right here to walk him through it rather than him being at school having to deal with those by himself. You know, how scary and uncomfortable that would have been. So, yeah, for sure. I think that was a huge eye opener, I guess, just that ability to be able to do that. So I think that sort of put it in my head. And again, I would say that things definitely improved, but I mean, it didn't go away during that time. And so he did all of first grade. So second grade, we put him back in school in person. And not only was there the whole COVID, you know, everyone wearing masks, meaning the teacher had to shout, kind of, you know, raise her voice to speak through the mask. And these kids in second grade hadn't been in school since kindergarten. And so that dynamic, I mean, all of it was just like the perfect storm. His entire second grade year, he was sick. Like you said, the immunity, I wanted to touch on that too because he was sick all the time. Always a cold, it seemed like back to back every day after school.
And this is before the delayed food allergy test, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes. We kind of went backwards a little bit.
I just wanted to make sure that other people understood. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Definitely. This was pre the test. And then and so yeah, all of second grade he was pretty miserable. Also, we had to do these convenient lunches, right? So we're just packing him his lunch full of stuff he's intolerant to, and because it was convenient and easy, and it needed to be something quick. Also, we didn't know his intolerances, but it would have been much more difficult to pack lunches for him to go external. Right? So I was able to control what he ate and then be available for him during his sort of attacks, is what I call them. But every day he would come home and he's like, "Mom, can't I just homeschool again and be with you?" You know, every day he's like, "Can't we just change it?" And so that, again, an emotional, you know, pull for both of us. It was not fun. And so I talked to my mom. She was the one picking him up from school because on days that he got out early, she would pick him up and she would tell me like he doesn't look good. So it was kind of like finally someone else sees it, you know. My mom started noticing the same stuff that I had seen she was seeing. So that felt really good. And so the more I just thought about it and prayed about it, I was like, Mom, my mom is a retired high school teacher, but she definitely has that school teacher mindset. And so I'm like, Mom, what do you think about homeschooling Lincoln? You know, and so she's like, yeah, actually, I was kind of surprised because she's very much that also that teacher mindset where they need to be in school with the other kids and things like that. But she said yes. And that is another huge thing where I feel so thankful and so fortunate. My mom is amazing. And since going back to the office, post COVID, I'm able to work from home 2 days a week, Thursday, Friday. So she does Monday through Wednesday, and then I kind of do the testing Thursday, Friday. And 100%, again, getting my mom on board with the diet, and it's tough. It's not easy. I mean, it's tough as a parent to revamp your house, but then to ask the other people in your life to also revamp their house, it's a lot. And so it was definitely a process. And she saw for herself firsthand, where again, same thing. It's like, oh, I gave him, ice cream today or whatever, crackers, we had McDonald's and he was fine. He didn't have a stomach ache. But over time she saw it. She's like, he's miserable. I'm like, yeah. She's like, he wasn't fake. I don't know. It's like she felt like how I felt when I was in the zone where I felt like I had to convince people that I wasn't making it up. She was in the same boat. And so we were able to sort of really join together and get him the food that helps him feel good. And so that was really huge. And I can't, I'm so thankful for that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's huge. And one word that just keeps coming to my mind in this story is validation. The test really validated what you know, you knew in your mom heart that something wasn't right. And just you being able to validate Link and be there for him and his emotions and in this process of not feeling well, and then your mom being able to validate also and see. And like you were saying, people do not understand. They see this as a fad, a trend. Oh, everybody is allergic to gluten, or,
Right.
this is just kind of all in your head. And that
Mm-hmm.
is the overall sense and energy that I got in this experience. And I think that that's what I hear you saying too,
Mm-hmm.
until you like had this proof, this piece of paper that says, look, and this is a blood test. And so, it gives that validation. Hey, this is real.
Yes.
It's that Western medicine, because again, and I don't know, you can let me know your thoughts on this, is that this Eastern or alternative medicine is looked down upon and not trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start going and dipping into this realm, people don't understand. And so when you have this concrete piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
to show people, hey, his body doesn't like these things, it's validating.
Yeah.
It's like there's proof that everything that I was feeling and I saw is true, that I wasn't crazy, and this is happening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the minute I start saying like, "Oh no, I didn't get this through Kaiser," it's like the guard goes up. It's like, well, what? It's like, no, I did this outside, and they're like, well, who? It's like a lot of
Yeah.
skepticism, and it's like, come on, he's just a kid. Like, let him have the donut or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you don't understand what that will put him through, even a bite. And so, but of course, I just maintain my ways, and like they don't get it. And so you can't make somebody get it right then and there.
Right.
Even for myself, like I fought it, for a while before I finally did it. So for whatever reason, you're right. There's like this disbelief or skepticism. I've had people roll their eyes like, "Oh, okay, here we go." And it's like,
Right.
"Okay, that's fine." But there's so much because I feel like people are regularly nauseous. People are regularly just uncomfortable for whatever, constant headaches, unable to sleep, so many symptoms. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like if only it's really tough once you're on the other side, so to speak. Yeah, so it's definitely a thing.
Right. And I experienced that too. You just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And if you're never introduced to things like these tests, like these tools, you have no idea. that it's even possible or that it's even a thing. But when once you have that new experience, once you go through it, you see, you cannot unsee that.
Right. 100%. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, but like you were saying, you have that grace because we've been there before. We were those people that didn't understand, that were like, not sure about that. I've done my own research and that didn't come up. My doctors, and so we get it. We understand. And this is one of the reasons that I am so thankful that you chose to come on here and share your story, because I think it is so powerful. And you said something to me. You said, this is important for other parents to hear. His story has value in what he went through.
Yeah, I also think that there's a part of me that, we did go through a lot. It was really, like I said, tough on the family, pretty traumatizing to a certain extent. Watching my son go through so much misery and then coming out on the other side and having this literal map in my hand that tells me and him, how to navigate through his eating habits that will help him heal. And so, just realizing that that story is there. And I had at the time talked to other parents over and over. They're like, oh, my daughter too, my son too, they wake up, they're not hungry, they feel nauseous all the time. Like, conversation after conversation after conversation with these parents about their kids just experiencing this. And so I felt like it was worth sharing because I mean, it's the worst seeing your kids and feeling so helpless and just knowing that you're kind of guessing and like, oh, try this and I hope it doesn't make you feel garbage. Um, it's just not a fun place to be. So I felt like it was worth sharing for sure.
Thank you. And again, I thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing this experience with us. Drawing from your experience, what guidance would you provide other parents dealing with a similar situation, especially concerning the delayed food allergy test? And also, what would you say to the parents that were in the same position as you, just unsure and untrusting and afraid?
Yeah. Well, I would say my heart goes out to you. I'm so sorry that you're experiencing that for starters. But second of all, I mean, I would just say trust your instincts. It's tough as a parent, as a mom, when you have so many people, even professionals, pushing back, convincing you almost from day one. Like the moment I had my baby, my first child, it's like this message is sent, you are not capable of raising your kid. It's really tough. And so I think, my oldest is 15 now, and I would say almost just starting, I don't know, to trust myself and believe that I am capable. My kids are having these struggles and they're real. I'm not making it up. They're not doing it for attention because I got that too. And so I would start by just saying, trust your instincts. They are true, they are valid, and they are real. And again, you may have to go through your own process like I did. I don't know if the test is the answer for you, but I did the same thing where I was like, I got to do this my way first. Who knows why that happens, but I would say just keep fighting. And again, it's never too late to develop that emotional connection with your kid, because I think that the safer they feel with you, the more they're open they're going to be about how truly crappy they feel on the inside. And so just taking that moment, I mean, there's nothing more rewarding, I think, as a parent than being able to fight for your kid and make a difference in their life and give them that foundation. Like, we set him up with this test. He has a literal map in his hand that will tell him and guide him for the rest of his life. I mean, I think probably over time, maybe he could redo the test if he chooses to get more up to date, But yeah, I think, using every opportunity to emotionally support your kids and listen to your instincts and really trust them and lean on that, not on the pushback you get from everybody else but on your own internal guide.
That's huge. So, I'm like jotting down notes because you said so many amazing things that I want to make sure that I touch on them. Trusting your instincts and really trusting yourself, I think, is so huge. And I love the fact that you said you're going to need to go through your own process. And that is okay. And that this test might not be, but to question and try all of the things. If you feel something is off,
Yes.
then find people that support that. Try
Yeah.
all the things. And I talk about this all the time, especially with my clients, is that there isn't just one modality that heals. I really feel like this delayed food allergy test was a huge tool, but I also feel like the emotional connection and that shift and that safety that you provided him also gave a solid ground for that healing as well.
Right.
And that's why I absolutely love this story, because it takes both of the modalities, the emotionally focused therapy and the holistic nutrition, and works both sides. And that's exactly what you did with your son. And so that second question was the emotion part, how parents can be more emotionally there for their children. And I know that you and I have had so many amazing conversations, and you've been going on this journey for quite a few years. And so what is one shift that you could say to parents that might really help them understand what it really means to be there emotionally for their kids? Because not every parent can just quit their job and homeschool, right? So that's not what we're saying. So could you just dive a little bit deeper in what that means for you and your children?
For sure. Yeah. I think, suggestions or hearing stories like, oh, I got the test, which is out of pocket, and then I homeschooled, which is like, you know, it can feel defeating and overwhelming. Like, I can't do that. And so I think really what we can do is, again, trusting ourselves. And I think the emotional part with my son, again, when he was having school troubles, it was like I almost partnered with the school to put pressure on him, was my first. It was like, come on, you got to read, you got to do this. And eventually I partnered with my son, right, to get this underway or whatever, to dig deep into listening to him instead of kind of reprimanding him for not focusing, switching it to like being our kid's advocate. And like, okay, as a parent, most of the criticisms, I would say, or the all of those things are from a place of fear. I would say that was my experience. I was afraid. And so I put that pressure on him. And so it's like stepping back and realizing that their little bodies, even at 15 or, whatever age they are, they're still going through so much. And so giving them the benefit of the doubt, so to speak, I guess, and stepping out of that fear, even though it's really easier said than done, but just finding ways to get out of that place of fear and be able to look your child in the face and say, I see you. I'm sorry you're suffering, and like, let me be there for you however I can. And so it's going to be small at first, small steps, just listening to them without judgment, and then showing up for them when they may not expect you to, things like that. I think those little steps will lead to this bigger connection where then they could start opening up and telling how they really feel.
That's huge. And so I think I hear you saying that validating their feelings, and really, like you said, in this process of validating their feelings and not acting out of fear of what other people are going to think of us, or what might happen in the future, but just really hearing them, we are in turn teaching them how to trust themselves. And because if we continue to tell them, stop listening to your body, we have to do it this way, they will in turn then not trust themselves, and we're repeating these cycles all over again. Is that close?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, you said it very well. Thank you.
No, yeah. And I just, those two words, validation and that phrase, just trusting yourself, I think are so huge in this story. And I think it just speaks volumes too as our role as parents and how we parent out of love versus fear. And that, like you said, is so much easier said than done. And that would take a whole few episodes to talk about. But basically, when we talk about that fear, we're talking about people judging them. When we talk about school, are we giving them what they need? Are they going to grow up to be successful and valued participants in society, And
Mm-hmm.
so those fears that they won't be
Right.
is what kind of stops us from listening to what's really going on with them. Even if we can't necessarily fix it in that moment,
Yes.
being able to see them
Mm-hmm.
and validate exactly what they're saying is healing in
A
itself.
100%. Yes. Seeing our teenager for everything that they're going through, rather than just oh, they're just trying to make me mad, or they're just, why won't they get good grades, or whatever it is that's like that
Right.
fear. I would say it's super fear based, but yeah, 100%, like seeing them, truly seeing them for who they are, and then yeah, parenting out of love, like you said. I think that, I mean, that's that shift.
One thing that I thought was really important that you said is it's not about the test, it's not about homeschooling. It's really about being present emotionally and being able to be there for them. Something else that you also said that was really important that I also experienced is that people saying they're just doing it for attention.
Mm,
And all of these symptoms that they're having, or if they're having trouble in school, or they're just something doesn't feel right, or they're withdrawn, finding the root cause because all of it makes sense. It's coming from somewhere. Something is happening with them. And in my opinion, even kids who, are doing things where people say, oh, it's just for attention, in that they're saying, hey, do you see me? Do you see
mhm,
what's going on with me? Something is not right. So, in an essence, I mean, they kind of are saying, hey, I need some attention. Something's going on with me. And
right.
so instead of seeing it as this negative thing, saying, hey, what can we do? How can I better understand? Because
Mhm,
when we're talking about that emotional connection, which ties into their physical health, is that it's really not what's wrong with them, it's what's happening to them. And everything happens for a reason. And part of what I have found that I really try to help other parents is that it's the way that we connect to our kids. It's how we reach them. It's the words and the way, the approach, and just we weren't taught how to see people. We
mhm,
were always taught how to, hey, you need to do this. I need you to be okay so I can be okay.
exactly.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this also ties into our healing process as parents, as people in general, because so much of it stems from our emotional well being. And if we haven't processed and gone through that and really understood where our root causes come from, how are we going to be there for our kids? And we're not going to be able to truly understand, validate, and understand their root causes. What do you feel about that?
100%, definitely. Starting out as a parent, I had no idea what the journey was going to be like. How I don't know. It's such a new world, I guess. It's such a mirror, right? Parenting, I would say, if you're open to developing and growing, if you take that time to admit that, okay, something's off here, and I don't want it to be like this anymore, right? And you want to decide to take that leap to change, or to heal rather, then yeah, it's definitely, there's something to that, as far as any any little, like you preach baby steps, Amber, any little baby step that you make towards connecting with your kid is a baby step towards your own healing process. I would say that 100%, because that has been at least my experience.
Same. Which is like this love-hate
Oh
relationship,
yeah.
right? It's like this beautiful, crazy, messy journey. So, also something else that I experience, and I don't know if you have, is that I loved knowing. So I didn't have to guess anymore because the doctors wanted me to, they said, oh, we can do this test, the IgE test, which is that anaphylactic. If you think that he's allergic to or sensitive to broccoli, then we'll do this test. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
then if not, you can come back and try something else. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to send my baby to get all of these blood tests. Isn't there just this
Right.
one test that I could just know what I'm looking at? Why guess when we can know is something that I learned at my school. How do you feel about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the same exact experience. It's like, well, if you have something specific you want to test for, we can test for that. And I'm thinking, yeah, how many blood tests are we going to put my baby through? Same thing. And I did love that. I think that was ultimately where I was. It's like I am so tired of guessing. I had exhausted myself with all these guesses, right? And like I mentioned before, just believing or worrying that everything I was feeding him was poisoning him. And it's like, oh, I hated that feeling of not knowing. And so, yeah, absolutely. I love that. Like, why am I putting myself through this constant guessing game with, with all of these things up in the air when I can just get this test and know? So yeah, 100%.
That's huge. And it sounds like it really gave you that peace. I know for me, it took some anxiety and peace away of knowing exactly what I can give him because we hear that, oh, kale is good for you. But now we're learning that it might not be good for our bodies or our babies' bodies. And so how do I know that if I don't have this test? And it's so crazy that we're not talking about this test more and using it as a tool. And again, it's not, like you said, it's not an end all be all, but it's another tool that we can just help our bodies, help our kids. Like you said, so many parents are going through this. I did notice that as I was going through my journey. I'm like, listen, you don't have to be alone in this. There's other options. For me, it was that removing the anxiety and the questioning, like you said, of what am I supposed to give him that's not going to make him sick? And this piece of paper, you know, comes in and says, hey, these are the things. Ultimately, of course, it's based on his body. That test is not end all be all. If the test comes back and says, okay, he can have broccoli, but he eats broccoli and his body obviously reacts to it, that's
Hmm.
not something you're going to continue to give him.
Right.
That's another reason we couple it with that elimination diet is to remove these things so that your body is able to show you how it actually feels when you give your body this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I find it interesting too because the test does give kind of a scale, and although he had some intolerances show up on the test, it blows my mind how I can see from what he eats. I could guess, oh, soy, is at this level versus yeast, which is at this level. It's like you can, I don't know, at least I could see, and then in my the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, pea protein he's allergic to, but I noticed that he has a more stronger reaction to
Yes,
say soy, right? It's crazy. And
it
like
is.
I even forgot at one point that squid was on his list. And we went through this whole thing to make him gluten-free calamari, and he started breaking out. And I'm like, what the heck? So I go back to the list, and sure enough, it's on there. I'm like, oh, I had forgotten. I'm like, Lincoln, you're allergic
Yep.
to squid. And he's like, no way. Anyway, but it's just that proof. It just kept, coming through, and that whole validation thing where it just time after time, even after getting the test, finding that it's true and that it's like, oh yeah, it's right there on the paper.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like, why guess when you can know? I mean, that's huge. That was, yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you brought up that it has these different levels, right? So I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but basically there is, a no tolerance. It doesn't affect your body, and then like a moderate and a more severe. And that's basically how hard it hits your immune system. Like you were saying, that you can see it. Same with my son. When Aiden has something that's higher on his list, he's bellied over. He can't sleep. He can't play versus maybe something lower on his list where he just breaks out in like a small rash or something like that. And that isn't the same for everybody. We're just sharing our experience and how we see it with our kids.
Exactly. Yeah, and it goes back to prove that it's so different for everybody. One person, like you said, the healthy, quote unquote, healthy stuff, the veggies and even my son drinking almond milk as a dairy replacement, your son couldn't drink that, right? So,
Yes.
and that's why I do have plans for my other kids. I really want to get them tested as well and set them up for success in their life. And not that there's an expectation that they're never going to eat this stuff, but just
That empowerment, like you said.
exactly. And then they are empowered to make their own choices. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so
So,
much.
yeah, thank you.
So, to just kind of wrap everything up, Pete, I just want to say thank you again for being so vulnerable. And I really admire your dedication, your questioning, your drive and determination to find something to help your family,
Mhm.
especially your son in this aspect, and that you have trusted yourself. You knew something was going on, but you needed to continue to find what resonated with you. And so I think that that's so huge in talking to other parents, is that learning to trust yourself and learning to find people and things that will validate what you're going through, and that there are other tools out there, that you have to be curious and communicate and talk about that and be vulnerable enough to share so that other people may also find their tools.
Mhm.
So I just want to say thank you for that. And I would absolutely love to have you back on to
Oh,
talk about your emotional experience with your kids and how much work you've done in that aspect, and the shift that I know and I've seen and I've experienced with you and your family in that, obviously, if you're willing. But
of course. Yeah, it would be an honor. I'm like humbled.
no, yes, I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you again for just being an advocate for your child, and for coming on here, and for being an advocate for parents and other children, and just in that validating other parents who are going through this really tough, lonely, confusing, scary experience.
Gosh, absolutely. Yeah, it's tough. It's not easy.
That's why you're such a beautiful badass. So thank you so much.
Oh, I love when you say that.
I love you. Thank you again for being on here, and have an amazing day, everybody.
Yep. Take care.
Hey everyone, Hunter from the Everything is Connected podcast here.
Heather from Hot Mass Espresso.
And Amber from Connection Over Perfection.
In this world of endless chatter, finding genuine conversations can be a challenge.
That being said, we introduced Podcast Connection Network, a space where we lay it all out, unfiltered.
Dive in with us. It's about authentic connections and conversations that truly matter.
To learn more about the network and each of our podcasts, click the link in the description below. The Podcast Connection Network. Never going to give you up, never going to let you down.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The intention of the host and guests is to spread love and awareness. Always seek the advice of your physician or trusted healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard in this podcast.